Stuckey, and joining me today are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Mike Calabrese and Greg Waddell. This is the penultimate episode of the season after months and months of grinding college football and college basketball. Only one episode to go for the national title, which will be out by Monday morning. All right, so we have all chalk, all 4 1 seeds left. First time since 2008. It's been a chalky tournament. I'll get your guys' thoughts on the tournament at large, but it's been, all 4, these were the 4 best teams, although I would argue that Texas Tech was right there when they were healthy, and they were healthy against Florida and had it, and that was devastating to watch. I could have hedged, I could have middled, I did nothing. I thought Texas Tech was going to win that game the entire way and did nothing. And they missed their front ends. Florida made 4 straight threes, and credit to the Gators for closing. But that was a rough one to swallow. But all 4 of these teams have been in the top 4 on KenPom since February 12th. But and it's the first time since ever that favorites swept outright. Sweet 16 and Elite 8. Favorites have won 14 straight games overall. Favorites of 6 or more points, 32-2 straight up. 22-12 against the spread in the tournament. If you include the high major conference tournaments, favorites of 6 or more, 62-3 straight up. Pretty wild run. It's been very chalky across the board. These are 4 elite teams. If you ranked the top 10 teams on KenPom since 1996, all 4 would be in the top 10. So I'm hoping that we get an elite Final Four and national title game, because we kind of deserve it. I'm okay with chalk advancing as long as we get some drama along the way, and there hasn't really been that much drama. The Elite 8, I thought, was kind of a dud compared to what we were expecting. And if you look, Will Warren, who does great work on his Substack and on Twitter, he had an article about the lack of close games. This was the fewest close game, the lowest close game percentage, I should say, like within 2 possessions since 1999. So I'm okay if it's chalky, but I want some drama along the way if we're not going to get any upsets. And I feel like we've kind of been robbed of that this tournament. So it's been rather boring overall, I would say. Greg, I'll go to you first before we get to these 2 games involving all of the 1 seeds. What are your takeaways so far from the tournament?
Yeah, it's like the movie that you fall asleep during that's too long, but then you get to the end and it just ends with a bang and there's a twist. It's M. Night Shyamalan, right? I think this Final Four will save whatever negative thoughts you have about the tournament. And I understand it's pretty elitist to act like we want all 1 seeds. I certainly don't feel this way every year. But guys, I can't shake coming off of 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, however many years ago it was, where we had to watch San Diego State and Florida Atlantic in a Final Four game, and we got drama. It was exciting. It was fun to bet on. It was not great basketball, and I was tired of pretending that it was. The good news here is I think there's a lot of years where if you went chalk, you would still have some pretty large mismatches in a Final Four. Like you could see a 1 seed that, is 10 points better than the 4th best team in the country. I don't think we have that here. I think we have 2 matchups that should be hotly contested. You've got a 5.5 point favorite and 2.5 point favorite. But to me, there's arguments that these are coin flip games. All 4 of these teams, top 10 teams per KenPom efficiency metrics that we've seen in 25 years. They're all deserving of being here. And I think it's only going to set the table for an incredibly entertaining Final Four, even if the tournament has not been that up until this point.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but it's a dangerous game to play because at the end of the day, it's still just 3 games, right? So, like, you just have a couple teams that are way off from 3, and then you get blowouts, and then you're counting on this whole tournament to come down to 3 games over the weekend. So that's why I just prefer. I don't even care if the chalk advances. I just give me some more drama along the way. Late game drama, which I thought was lacking this tournament. I don't think it's always going to be like that. I do still think there'll be Cinderellas. This was just one of those years. I will say, though, I'm definitely reevaluating how I'm looking at futures in both college football and college basketball. Like college football and college basketball are different sports than they were even a couple of years ago. College football futures, I think I got a little fortunate because Clemson snuck in and won the ACC. But I think in college football, with all the turnover, there's more opportunity to take some longer shots within conferences, which is what I'm going to look like, because just the variance within conferences, within leagues, I think is going to be higher moving forward. Maybe win totals aren't worth as much time as they usually put into them. And then in college basketball, if we're going to get this more top heavy landscape moving forward, I probably have to cut down on some of the longer shots there, both, Final Four conference tournaments, because I completely whiffed on my futures. It basically wiped out so much profit from the season. Texas Tech was right there. I get it. There was some bad injury luck, but I think the process I need to look at overall. That's one of the key takeaways that I'll have from this season. I mean, it's a new sport. There's so much different about the sport. You always have to learn and evolve. That's one of my key takeaways. Calabrese, what are your thoughts on the tournament so far?
Yeah, I agree in terms of the overall landscape, it being more top heavy moving forward. You're looking at this news cycle, and all the good mid-major players have already been, on the move to go play at these power programs. Donovan Dent going from New Mexico to UCLA, the package deal of Drake, their head coach, and Bennett Sturtz going to Iowa. Oscar Clough, a great story, started at, Washington State. Now he's back in the Power Four, the power, top conferences, at least in terms of playing for Purdue next year. So I agree. I mean, essentially, it's become the minor leagues to basically be a farm system for these top teams. And you can see it in those graphics where the starting lineups for the Sweet 16 teams and the Elite 8 teams in terms of where they started, and all the way through the national title, a guy like Janai Broom starting at Morehead State. There was a chance in 5 to 10 years ago that he would have played his entire career there and been absolutely dominant, even more so than he has been in the SEC. But those days are totally over with the transfer portal the way it is, with the way that NIL is. The teams just absolutely cannot compete. In college football, there's going to be a story from time to time, like an Ashton Genty, where they pass around the collection plate and they're able to match or come into the ballpark of matching an offer from an SEC or a Big Ten school. But by and large, these teams are just getting, pillaged for the top brands. So I do think it requires looking at futures in a new way. What I'll say about this tournament, though, in terms of Cinderella getting bounced so early, yes, I think at this point you just have to embrace it, that this is special and different. This is the first time since 2008 that all one seeds made it to the Final Four. But that's basically where that comparison ends, because if you look at the 2008 Final Four, at least by KenPom, they would be 5 through 7 if they were stacked up in this year's field. Every single one seed in this Final Four is higher than every single one seed, including the national champion in Kansas in 2008. So I think these are all special teams. I think this is a situation that is rarely going to happen. You look at college basketball over a 40, 50-year window. This is one of those special years, so why not embrace it? And also, I think it's interesting to note that whoever wins this championship is likely going to end either as a 1, 2, or 3 highest rated KenPom team of all time. So I think that's exciting. I mean, college basketball is exciting because it has different historical roots compared to the NBA. The NBA is kind of like broken up into these windows of greatness. You can't even really compare because the rule differences in the 80s and 90s. College basketball still has a bit of that charm where you want to compare, like, will Duke immediately vault past the 99, the 01, the 92 team if they go ahead and win? Those are fun conversations to have, on top of it potentially being some elite basketball played in San Antonio. So I'm excited to cut it up at this point because, all the Cinderellas, the luck just, wasn't there. But what's interesting is you could say if UC San Diego pulls it out, wins one game, or if Colorado State gets a fortunate whistle, they call it travel on Queen on that last shot, or he doesn't make it, then all of a sudden I think the narrative's a tiny bit different. It's just every single opportunity for someone to win other than a top team, it just didn't materialize, including what happened to Tech. Stuck. I would just say, I know it's a little consolation, you didn't need to hedge out there because they were the better team. They were the better side the whole way. If Florida doesn't catch absolute fire and make every shot, and Tech is missing every foul shot that they should make, obviously you can play armchair quarterback after the fact, but the fact of the matter is Tech was the right side, and just every dog has gone to die in this tournament. So at least luckily in this spot in the Final Four, that can't be the case anymore with all one seeds.
They should have. I mean, you could argue they should have lost to Arkansas, which is my consolation, because I won't get over that loss to Florida for a long time. Florida arguably has been the weakest won by a wide margin because they easily, you could argue they should have lost twice. UConn can't make an open three. Texas Tech can't make a free throw, and they come back from 10 down with 5 to go. But credit to the Gators for getting through. By the way, you mentioned 2008, the last time all 4 1 seeds got through. That was also in San Antonio. Classic national title, horrendous Final Four. Hoping that I think both Final Four games were blowouts with the 1 seeds. I will say, I think that you mentioned UC San Diego and Drake. Where the Cinderellas I think are going to have to come from is I don't think it's a coincidence that those teams had a chance. Like, I think they had the best chance this year of like winning a couple games, and Drake did. They were like D2 teams, basically D2 rosters that were together for a while, so they had a continuity. So these good mid-majors that have that would have had that continuity advantage in the past, well, they probably don't because then their players get poached. So it was interesting to watch like these former D2 schools were the ones that were arguably the feistiest of the mid-majors this year. So it's like, can any of these good mid-majors stay together? It's going to be a lot tougher in today's world. But let's get to the Final 4 games. We will start, we'll go in chronological order, 6:09 Eastern, Saturday on CBS. Oh, I got to tell a story about so the Chicago event was amazing. Thank you for everyone for coming out. I wish I could have hung out with more of you during the second game. Had some personal stuff that went on, but the event was such a success. We're going to do a bunch more. It was a pleasure meeting the ones that I got to meet. But around dinner time, I get a call from my neighbor. Like, this wasn't at 11 at night. This wasn't at 2 in the morning. I get a call from my neighbor who's like, isn't in my neighborhood. He's like way out back, and there's like a fence, but he can like see my house. And he was calling. I was like, why the hell is my neighbor calling me right now? So I assumed it had to be like an emergency or something. I thought my dog got out. I was like, oh God, Petey is out running around. So I picked up and he said, are you home? And I said, no, I'm in Chicago. And he said, my wife just saw a random guy sprinting out your back door. And I was like, oh, my wife is home. So I was like, thank you for calling. And I FaceTimed her right away, and she was shaken up. And what happened was there was a guy, like a homeless guy on drugs, like a couple of neighborhoods over. And he got caught going through someone's car, and he was like trying to steal stuff, I assume. He got chased off. He ran and he sprinted a while, and then he ended up jumping over our fence into our backyard, and then he went around to all of our doors, and we had one door open. I mean, this was like dinner time, Sunday. It was storming. The lesson is always lock your doors no matter what. He came into the house, and luckily we have cameras. We have them all over. It's clear shots of him. Came into the house, and he was clearly not in the right frame of mind, because there was like a purse there. But he took a pair of pants. It's a recent pair of pants that I bought. And then he kept walking through the kitchen, and he opened up our bedroom door. My wife was in bed, and he said, oh, and my dog, luckily my Pit, went bananas. So he shut the door so the dog couldn't get to him. And then he ran out the back of the house, and then sprinted down into this next neighborhood. I called my wife. She called the cops. The neighbors called the cops, and we had them all over our cameras, and they found him like, I don't know, 45 minutes later, and arrested him. So yeah, that was insane. You just never know. Like, you never know when someone is going to stumble onto your house and break in. So yeah, we left the door unlocked, and luckily Petey, our Pit, saved the day. So he got extra treats this week, but everything was okay. But yeah, I was dealing with that. Wasn't fun. I wish I was here, and I wasn't. But it was awesome meeting all of you guys. It was a great turnout. We had a great time. I wish Tech could have gotten over the hump. But that was a great game. The second game was awful, Alabama Duke, but what are you going to do? All right, let's move on to the Final Four games. We have Florida, Auburn in San Antonio, 6:09 Eastern on CBS. Florida's a 2.5-point favorite here, total 160.5. This is notable here is Todd Golden taking on his former mentor. He was the what was his official title? He was like director of operations or something under Pearl, something like that. I don't know. That Pearl's his former mentor. This is a rematch, and it's actually the first ever SEC versus SEC Final Four game. It is a rematch from the regular season, obviously in a game that Florida won outright in the jungle. You want to talk about a power rating adjustment. In that game, Auburn was a 10.5 to an 11-point home favorite. And now they're a 2.5-point dog on a neutral court. Elijah Martin didn't play in that game. Florida did win, and Florida's was unbelievable against the number. Leading up to the tournament, they haven't been great in the tournament so far. But now they're a 2.5-point favorite here. Teams that won the first meeting in the Final Four are 6-4 straight up. Favorites are 6-4 straight up and against the spread. Small sample size. Don't know if anything you could take of it. This is a pretty high total of 160.5. Totals of 160 or more in the Final Four national title game. It's only happened 15 times since 1985. Unders have gone 10-5 in those games. Although these two teams did combine for over 170 points in their regular season meeting. Greg, I'll throw it to you first. Florida, 2.5-point favorite here. There is the question about Janai Broome. Awesome. One of the coolest moments of the tournament, in my opinion, so far is when Broome came back in, got that rebound, hit that three. You know, I had real questions like, is he going to be out for next weekend? So, but there definitely are still some questions about how healthy he will be. He's not expected to practice the next couple of days. I do anticipate he will play, but how healthy is he? I don't think anyone knows the answer to that outside of that locker room and him as of right now. And maybe there's still some uncertainty there. But what are you seeing here with Florida Auburn in an SEC rematch in San Antonio?
You know, I expect this to be a great game, and apologies to our listeners if my voice is cracking. I'm under the weather a little bit, so it's a true flu game for me right now. But it's just a metaphor for the way that Auburn likes to make it hard on themselves at times. They're a very theatrical basketball team, and that's not to say that Janai Broome isn't hurt. I think he's pretty clearly not 100%. I think since that re-aggravation of the shoulder injury against Kentucky, a month ago at this point, he hasn't looked fully himself. Now, the thing is, when you say that he hasn't looked fully himself, he's still the best big in the country if he's not fully himself. I mean, what he did in the second weekend here, 22-16 against Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. I mean, Vlad Golden got nothing at the rim in that game. And then to come back, he dominated that first half against Michigan State, had a double-double in the first half of both of those games, seeing double teams for most of it. Finishes with 25 and 14 in 29 minutes. Came back in after the injury, hit a three. I just, I know he's not 100%, and I think that's almost swung the value in the market here onto Auburn for me. Because I think they can win this game without Janai Broome being 100%. And I think, you know, you look back at 4.5 months of this season, if you had ever told us we would get Auburn playing anybody but Duke at plus money in the Final Four, I think we would have jumped all over that all season long. I understand things have changed, but to me, Florida in this run in the tournament, they're pretty fortunate to be here. They're great, but if not for Walter Clayton turning into Kemba Walker, not once, but twice. I mean, he saved them the UConn game. He saved them the Texas Tech game. And I think Calabrese is right. Florida's very clearly been the better team in both those games, but they played with their food for 25 minutes in both of those games. And those teams couldn't really close the door. If Texas Tech had hit some free throws, Stuck, I know you know this, it might be a different story. But to me, I just feel like this game should be a true pick'em. And I don't feel great jumping aboard the team that has the injury concerns. But I look back at what happened in that Auburn-Florida game the first time. I don't think there's much that is going to map here. Elijah Martin didn't play. It was a weird game where Florida was down 10 almost immediately and then went on like an extended 62-33 run over the next 20 minutes. Like, give them credit. They went toe-to-toe in Auburn's home court and did that. It just felt like an avalanche of a game where Auburn didn't respond to the momentum well. I think they'll be ready for this. They've been the team in this tournament. Even though we probably haven't seen Auburn play 40 minutes of great ball, they haven't really been in question here. I guess the only moment where they were up in the air was down 9 to Michigan. And with 10 minutes left, they finally did flip the switch and played to their ceiling for those 10 minutes. And it was, a 25-4 run or something like that. So I'm going to trust my gut here. Neither team should be plus 130. I think Auburn's been the better team over the course of the season, and I'll back them at plus 130.
Yeah, I think this is closer to a coin flip too. Obviously, you got to take into account Broom's not being 100%, but I do expect him to play. I think that, and also I think Auburn's rating took a bit of an artificial hit. And this is part of what Auburn is, though. But they kind of were coasting for like 2 weeks, right, at the end of the season. And it just appeared that way. I think Auburn's peak is better than Florida's peak, but Florida's a little bit more consistent. Would you agree with that, Greg?
100%, yeah.
So the things that I do think map from that game, or I do believe both offenses will have success. And you can get out and transition against Auburn. That's a bad thing against Florida. Auburn is vulnerable to offensive rebounds. That's a bad thing against Florida. Florida can get to the line some here, get some easy points. And the versatility of Florida's bigs did cause Auburn some trouble in that first meeting. And on the other side, I think the same thing can be said about Auburn. I think some of their off-ball stuff that they run, the versatility of some of their bigs and mobility can give Florida's bigs some issues. So, and then there's obviously familiarity between the coaches here. So I do think both offenses have paths to success here. And that makes for probably an exciting back and forth game. I'm just conflicted on, do I want to bet Auburn? I'm probably going to wait, see if this ticks up anymore, see if there's Broom news. But part of me says there's probably going to be runs in this game. And Auburn has, look, we found out what was stronger, Michigan State slow starts or Auburn slow starts. Well, it was Michigan State. That they had the power in that, because Auburn's 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 games in the first half. Their one cover was against Michigan State, who was just unbelievably bad in the first half against the spread. So I might wait. It might get a little risky and see if I can get a better number on Auburn Live. I do expect there to be runs here. I think both offenses will have success, and we'll see if Auburn comes out focused. But from a pure numbers perspective, I do show value in Auburn. I make Florida very, very small favorite. And yeah, I think that if Auburn is focused from the jump, that this, and Broom is 80% and is good to go. I think this number is a bit too high, but maybe we should just moneyline parlay Florida and Duke, because that's the infinite money glitch here. Calabrese, what are you seeing here?
I'm going to go under on a player prop, and it's Janai Broom. Points and rebounds, it's sitting at 28.5. I think they just cobbled together this number by the fact that he went for 29 in the stat combo in the first meeting with the Gators. 2 things. I mean, first, Broom is a warrior. The kid plays through injuries all the time. We saw it coming back from you don't need to be a doctor. He hyperextended his knee. Everybody saw it. Everyone assumed the worst. He also had his elbow banged up. Yet adrenaline kicks in. He comes back in, gets a rebound, hits a 3. It's incredible. But now that he's coming off of that, not practicing, clearly not being 100%, also had that shoulder injury that's kind of lingered throughout the year. He's going to get banged up again if he plays. I think there's a 0%, or there's a non-0% chance that he doesn't hit his 30-minute average. And if he doesn't, when you start to factor in the other elements of this prop, I think the only way to play it is on the under, because if you look at what Florida can do in terms of their front court, they can throw bodies at him in waves. And the first meeting, they didn't have Hankleton to be able to do so. Since the SEC tournament, that kid's played over 12 minutes a game off the bench, and he's somebody who can make it difficult to get those easy rebounds. You mentioned it. Florida is so dynamic in terms of crashing the offensive glass, so just picking up those defensive boards is going to be a labor. And then on top of it, by being able to have all these capable bigs with 5 fouls of their own to go around, I think there's real chance for Broome to get in foul trouble here. You saw it against Michigan. He fouled out of that game. He still had a huge game statistically, but just in terms of Michigan's size, there was an opportunity for the whistles to work against him. So between the injuries, the foul potential, and also just from a game flow perspective, if Auburn is playing from behind and there's just less looks on the low post for him, most of his offensive work, you would have to imagine, is going to come on the offensive glass. He averages nearly 4 offensive rips per game. But if they're shooting a lot from the perimeter to try to catch up with the 3-point shot, I think that plays against this total as well. It's actually less than, minus 110. I saw minus 105 even money out in the market on the under. It's not exciting because I think we all love this kid. I mean, he's been so great for college basketball. He's been one of the best success stories going from Moorhead, coming to Auburn, and just getting better every single season. But I think all of these factors that potentially could take him off the court makes this a must-under play.
All right, good stuff there. Who do you think wins, Calabrese?
I think Florida's going to win. I feel not great about that for a couple of reasons. I had 18-1 early in the year on Auburn, so I got to figure a way out to hedge. I've been holding off. But this Florida team, they just got the luck on their side. I mean, they should not have won. If you look at all the games, if you look at the UConn game, you look at the Tech game, they should have got bit in one of those. But all of a sudden, they can just switch it on. And I think for that reason, in terms of their upside and spurtability, to use a made-up basketball phrase, I think they're going to go ahead and get this done and kind of kill my ticket.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give credit to Florida, and especially Walter Clayton, Greg, as you alluded to. But part of their, and this sometimes this is just what happens to a national champion, is you got to get breaks. They definitely got lucky with UConn got wide open looks that they could not hit. Tech couldn't hit a front end. So they were definitely, it wasn't just all Florida, but sometimes you see that in every sport. You get a couple breaks along the way, and when it's all said and done, no one's going to remember those games 10 years from now if they win it all. All right,
I can imagine that Dickie V celebrates April Fool's Day, guys. We're recording this on April Fool's Day, but Dick Vitale just tweeted, "What a tough blow for Auburn as superstar Janai Broome cannot play Saturday." So I have no idea if Dickie V knows anything or not, but you heard it here first. Dick Vitale, Janai Broome won't play.
Does Dick Vitale do April Fool's jokes?
I feel like April Fool's has been around well into the 1930s or whenever he was born. So yes, I feel like he's...
No, I'm saying I got to look back at his history of April. I hate April Fool's on Twitter. What could have happened is, I mean, this is just happening. I haven't looked into this at all. There's, he could have also felt for another April Fool's joke.
Yeah.
There was an Alabama account that I did see earlier that was pretending to be a reporter that tweeted out that he's out. So, I'm going to say Dickie V got. I mean, I've gotten on Twitter on that stuff too, but we'll see. I don't know. Just breaking news as it happened. All right, before we get to the second semifinal game, gotta shout out my guys at Edgeboost, because I know if you're listening to this show, you probably like betting as much as I do. And when it comes to betting, there are two things I'm always trying to do: make it easier and make it more profitable. That's why I partnered with Edgeboost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. Edgeboost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit, because with the Edgeboost Visa debit card, you get up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. This isn't some credit card gimmick. I promise. This is what I thought when I first heard of Edgeboost, but I opened my own Edgeboost debit card account, and it made it so much easier to deposit into all of my sportsbook accounts. There's no catch. There's no hidden fees. There's no minimum balance requirements. None of that. They make all their money on volume. They have agreements set in place with all of the sports books. There's literally no catch. And if you ever had a casino transaction flagged by your bank because they thought it was suspicious or been given the runaround when you're trying to fund a sportsbook account online, the Edgeboost debit card is the perfect tool to alleviate all of those issues. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. Never. It's why I was happy to open an account and have been happy ever since. So make your betting life easier and stop leaving money on the table. Visit Edgeboost.bet to sign up. And if you use promo code BBOC and deposit $25, you'll receive a $25 deposit match plus Tier 2 status for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's Edgeboost.bet, promo code BBOC. Can't stress enough how seamless and easy the entire process is. So make sure you check out Edgeboost. So, do you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get into the game? Well, with Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. The game is in your hands. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored, and more. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports and leagues. It's very intuitive. It's very easy. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 just with your sports knowledge. For example, if you want to throw in some broom unders on the Calabrese breakdown or the potential Vital news, but you can do it. It's extremely easy. I've used Underdog forever. The product is great. So make sure that you download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code BBOC to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code BBOC. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms do apply. All right, concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Great way to just add some sweat to your daily betting cards when you don't really like a side or a total and you just want to sweat a bunch of games on a Saturday or whatever day it is. Make sure you check out Underdog. All right, let's get to the second semifinal game. Duke taking on Houston. Duke 5-point favorite here. Total 136.5, 137. This is a rematch of last year's Sweet 16 game when Duke won, but there's a little caveat there because it was right. They won 54-51, and unfortunately, Jamal Shed got hurt in that game. Only played 13 minutes, finished with 2 points. Tugler also missed. So Houston kind of got a bad break across the board and lost to, I think Duke was a 5 seed in that game in the Sweet 16. Houston will benefit here from playing in its home state. They are the 9th team to do so since 1975 to play a Final Four game in their home state. 7 of the previous 8 have each won their Final Four game, including both teams who were listed as underdogs. They've gone 2-0 in this spot. So maybe a little home state. I'm assuming there's going to be a pretty mixed crowd, but maybe a slight edge, very small edge to Houston there, getting to play in San Antonio. When I look at this game, number one, the number to me is way too high, just from a pure numbers perspective. Duke is a juggernaut. I mean, Duke is just beating teams into submission. Pretty crazy what they did to Alabama with Flagg not even having a great game. But I mean, I think this is a couple points too high just based on my numbers. Now, is it the best matchup for Houston? I don't think it's the ideal matchup. I mean, one of the things that Duke has that doesn't get talked about enough, or maybe it does, but maybe I just think it doesn't personally, is their length. And that was just what took Sears out of the game. I mean, Sears couldn't handle their length. And it's not like Houston's guards are super long. I mean, you're talking, what's Cryer, 6'1", Sharp's probably 6'2", Uzan 6'3", 6'4", somewhere around there. I don't think Duke plays anyone that's under 6'5" or 6'6", right? Like everyone is 6'5", 6'6", or taller. So that length is definitely an issue. Can the Houston guards make enough shots? Because here's the thing. You can't score in transition against Duke, and you can't score at the rim. Well, Houston doesn't try to score at the rim. Heck, you would think that with Houston and their bigs and their offensive rebounding, this is a team that likes to score at the rim. No, they have one of the lowest rim rates in the entire country. This is a team that loves the mid-range jumper. When they do shoot the three, they shoot it better than anyone in the country at close to 40%. So they're going to have to make jumpers here. Can their guards handle the Duke length? I think it's basically what this game comes down to. Like, Uzan's going to have to hit some threes. Sharp's going to have to hit some threes. You're going to need a good Cryer game here. You can't have a Cryer dud. Because Houston's going to get their fair share of offensive rebounds. I don't think they can completely dominate Duke in that aspect, as they do many opponents. On the other end of the floor, the thing that scares me with Houston is because this game's going to be played in the half court. And Duke's comfortable there, so it's not like this is one of those games where, hey, Houston controls the tempo. Duke isn't really comfortable in a half court game. Duke's more than comfortable playing in the half court. This is an elite half court offense taking on an elite half court defense. And what scares me with this Duke offense is that, in order to beat the Houston defense, which is going to swarm you, it's going to trap you, you have to hit your unguarded catch and shoot threes. And that's Duke's specialty. I mean, they generate unguarded catch and shoot threes at a 99th percentile per synergy. And they have four players who score over 1.5 points per possession on those uncontested catch and shoot jumpers. So that's what scares me, is like you have guys like Flag who can just get into the teeth of the defense and then kick it to those weak side shooters, and Duke has them in spades. So like if this becomes a shooting competition of Duke hitting those uncontested, unguarded catch and shoot jumpers, if Duke stopped turning the ball over, versus the Houston guards who have to make tougher jumpers against length, that's what worries me, because I would definitely give an advantage to Duke. But I think this number is way too high. Favorites have been dominating. Maybe there's just some inflation in the market. No one wants to bet against Duke. But I don't think these teams are 5 points apart on a neutral court. So there are some things that I don't love about this matchup, but I think I have to take the points here with Houston. I will say what I do really like about this is it's what I said, and I said this a couple weeks ago. So the team that I think has the best chance of beating Duke is probably a Tennessee or Houston. You slow the game up. You want to just limit possessions, because Duke is that good. And then you're going to have to hit some threes, which Houston is capable of doing. And you need to be ultra physical across the board. We saw Clemson have some success with that. This is basically like men versus kids. And is that physicality? I think that's an edge for Houston here. Now, I have been impressed with Duke, and they've grown and they've become more physical as the year has progressed. But I think Houston can play its game offensively. It's not a very complex offense. It's just, can they make jumpers against the length of Duke? That's going to be the key. And then Duke's going to get their fair share of open jumpers. Can they hit them against the Houston defense that's still going to get out and contest? They still have a ton of length all over the place. But I just think this is personally too many points. So I have to side with Houston here, catching 5. I think there's a couple points too high, which I don't really see often in the Final Four. I think that this should be like 2.5. Greg, what are you seeing here?
I agree broadly. I think these are the two best teams left. Ken Palm agrees. I think I have too much respect for Auburn and Florida to just call this the national championship game. But I think if we could move the bracket around and we wanted the two best teams to meet for a national championship, it would be Duke and Houston. I completely agree that the way Houston plays is probably the most dangerous approach to a basketball game to try and beat this Duke team. I think there's a lot of concerns with how Auburn and Florida play that they may just run into a wall when they get to Duke if they get there. To me, when you step back and look at this matchup, one of two things is going to happen, because I completely agree with your point on length. I don't see Houston scoring. It's a team full of little guards. Their bigs are 6'7", 6'8". That's Duke's wings. Their guards are all 6'6". Like, I think they're really going to struggle with this. And the question will be, what does the number one defense, Houston, do against the number one offense in Duke? Can they drag this game into the mud? Can they slow it down, make it a full-blown half-court game, make it that ugly 55-51 game it was last year in the Sweet 16? I think they probably can, and I think where the number is, the value is on Houston. 5.5, that's too many points. KenPom has this as a 2-point game. Even if you believe Duke is the world beaters that I believe they are, the spread is too much here. Now, I have way too much respect for Duke to back Houston. I can't do it. Call me a coward if you want, boys. I think that's probably the right term. I think this team is head and shoulders better than everybody else here. And I think they are going to win the national championship. So as much as I show value on the Houston side, I'm not willing to touch that. So I'm going to wade into a player prop here, and I'm going to take Con Knippel, 22-plus point rebound assists. It's minus 115. The reason being, I think that JoJo Tugler is the guy to watch for Houston defensively. He matches up really well with Cooper Flagg. He's one of maybe two guys in the country that I think match up well with Cooper Flagg. The other was Grant Nelson, and Coop really struggled against Grant Nelson in the Alabama game. Now, Duke still rolled. Everything went well. But we've seen that if it does...
Tugler's a much better defender than Nelson.
He is. And if it turns into this half-court mud-based game, Duke turns to Khan to become the primary option. Shire has no shortage of actions, pin down stuff, get him into ball screens. They just spam him constantly. They did it in November. They're still doing it at the end of the season when Cooper Flagg can't get going. I think there's a really good chance that happens here. Khan has been rolling in his last two games. He had 20 points and 21 points in his last two. He's playing 35 minutes a game, even though these games have ended up being pretty sizable Duke wins. He's easily gone over this number in both of those games against two very quality opponents in Alabama and Arizona. So to me, it's kind of my way of middling this. I respect Duke too much to fade them. I think the value's on Houston. But if Houston does dictate the game and make it closer than I think it becomes a big Con Knippel game and he goes over his numbers, getting Duke a close game win.
But one thing I will say is that I think the key here is Houston's got to keep Duke under 70. I think that's like the mark that they got to be shooting for. What's Duke's team total? It's got to be close to that. Let me see. Their team total is 70.5. Because I think Houston this year is 32-0 when they hold opponents to under 70 points. I also just think, I have a ton of respect for Duke. I haven't bet against Duke once in this tournament. It's either been Duke or nothing in every game that they've played. But this is the first time that I'm showing value against them. And I just have a ton of respect for Houston too. This is a team that they lost to Auburn in the second game of the year. Since then, they've lost 3 games, all in overtime. That's it. Two of the teams that were in the Elite Eight. Since the start of December, they've lost 1 game to Texas Tech, who I think is the 5th best team in the country, by 1 in overtime. So, and by the way, they talk about their path. They had the hardest path to the Final Four of any team, right? They played Gonzaga in the second round, Purdue, and then Tennessee. It was as hard of a path as you can have in terms of seeding. And, Gonzaga for KenPom was a top 10 team. They basically beat 3 top 15 KenPom teams en route to getting to San Antonio. So Yeah, I respect Duke a ton. And look, if they're red hot from three, Houston probably can't keep up. But I just have to take the points here based on where my numbers put this game. And Sampson here's one thing I'm worried about with Sampson. Sampson is an unbelievable coach. I despise how he handles when someone on his team gets 2 fouls. And he says it. He comes out and says it. He says, I don't want to risk them getting a third. But he basically fouls out. He's 322nd in the country in 2 foul participation. I'm surprised he's not lower than that. I think he only plays guys with 2 fouls in the first half 8% of the time. We saw that with Juwan Roberts against Tennessee. Now, game state does dictate some of that, and they were comfortably ahead. But he does this all the time. And Roberts sat the final 15 minutes of the first half. You're going to need your full deck against Duke for majority of the game. So that could hurt Houston. Shire's much more likely to play guys who are in foul trouble. So depending on how the whistle goes, that could hurt Houston in the first half. So that's something I'll be interested to watch. But Calabrese, what are you seeing here in Houston Duke?
I think this line is inflated because you can't get more public than this Duke team. Every casual in the world wants to bet on the number one team with the presumptive number one pick in the NBA draft. They've just been boat racing teams down the stretch. And then on the other side, Houston plays kind of that, rock fight style. It doesn't it doesn't encourage gamblers to get behind them. But I think this number is off by 2.5 points. So I'm going to take Houston. And also, Greg, I appreciate your candor saying that you don't have the courage to get in front of this Duke locomotive. I'm going to put myself out there. This will get played by, Duke fans, for ages, moving forward. But I am not over the fact that Duke has not been trustworthy at the end of close games. And I'll get to that in a second. But let's first look at pace and defense. They played against 3 teams in the ACC that were deliberate, that played really slow. Virginia, Notre Dame, and Clemson. They went 1-2 against the spread in those games. Then you look at teams that they played that had quote-unquote elite defenses, at least top 20. Clemson and Kansas. They lost both of those outright. And when you look at the end-of-game situations, I still have my fear if I'm holding a Duke ticket even to win outright. You look at the Clemson game. They're up 71-70 in the final minute. They lost 77-71. In that last minute, they went 0 for 3 from the field, and Flag had a turnover. Against Kansas at the beginning of the year, they were up 73-72 with 90 seconds left. They turn it over twice. Con Kneppel misses a 3 at the end of the game. They lose 75-72. Hell, even the performance against UNC in the ACC tournament, they're up by 4 without Cooper Flag, under 3 minutes to go. They close the game 0 for 2 from the field with a turnover, and they're bailed out by Jalen Withers' lane violation. Otherwise, that game's going to overtime. On the other side, you have Houston, who has a ton of tight game experience. They played in 4 overtime games. They had 6 wins by 2 possessions or less, and that miracle comeback at Fog Allen. Because there is going to be a chance that Duke gets up by 10 in the first half or early in the second half. Do they have the goods as a 3-point shooting team? Absolutely, to get back into it. I just think that they are so mentally tough, and Sampson has them in a rare spot that they can actually play the underdog card. I think they're going to have a ferocious defensive effort, and if it becomes, a toughness competition in the last 4 minutes, I still have my issues in terms of, does Duke just put the ball in Cooper's hands and say, go be somebody who gets his own shot, be a facilitator, we're putting all the pressure on you? Because I've seen that play out, and it hasn't been at the level that the rest of his game is. I'm not saying that he's not a generational player that deserves to be the number 1 pick. I'm just saying in terms of like a pure scorer in crunch time, I haven't seen it. And in terms of strength of schedule, this is the last point I have. We're patting Duke on the back. They've really only elevated their game down the stretch when Flag's been 100% and started and finished. I get all that. They were 54th in strength of schedule this year. The ACC was a tire fire. If you throw out that weird COVID season after, the COVID cancellation in 2021, almost every team in the KenPom database that won the national championship was top 30, if not top 15 in strength of schedule. There's something to be said for having that muscle memory of what do we do in crunch time? And Duke just didn't have to face it really for 3 months. And then you look in this tournament run, there hasn't been those high stress, high leverage situations in the last 2 or 3 minutes. So all that being said, I'm going to take Houston plus the points. I may look like a fool. Duke wins by, 20. They're the generational team we've all, heard so much about. But I just view this as closer to, I wouldn't say a coin flip. I think Duke should be a 3-point favorite here to be on the cusp of 2 possessions. I think that's the market speaking to Duke being public and Houston being scrappy.
Yeah, I also will say, I mean, you're nitpicking a little bit, and Duke's a different team than they were. But
sure. I mean, absolutely. A lot of these picks, the Kansas game, the Kentucky game, that was November, December.
Because they also beat Auburn. They beat Auburn, but it was an elite defense. But I like the Houston path has been more impressive than Duke's. Like no one thought Baylor was any good. Did anyone think Arizona was a threat? And that game was 100-93. They got the good Caleb Love game and won. You got to give credit to them for that. And they were in control most of the game. But Alabama, I wasn't a believer in Alabama the whole year. I mean, this is a team with their shot volume profile, their defense. Now, the way that they won was super impressive. But I also think Malik Brown's status is kind of important. Is he going to, if they can switch everything, that Duke's defense just goes to another level. And if they can do that against Houston, who's going to need to make shots here, it's going to become even more difficult. What's he only played like 5 and 3 minutes so far? His versatility just he's played 4 and 3 minutes. Have you heard anything on him? Is he just expected that's it? He's just going to play 3 minutes? So I don't know. If he can play more, then their defense just goes to another level. And I think he's going to be important too. He would be even more important. Duke can easily win this without him, but in a potential next matchup too, as well. All right, so let's sum it up here. Let's get our predictions. Who's winning the Final Four? Who's winning the national title? I'm going to be the moron. I'm going to say that Houston, that we get the run to moneyline favorites comes to an end. Houston beats Auburn, gets revenge from a game earlier this season in the national title. It's probably dumb. I mean, Duke's the rightful favorite for a reason, but that's my gut feeling as of right now. Greg, what's your prediction? Duke
the
beats
plane game rematch. That would be a fitting way to end the season. Fellas, I have a suspicion here that Duke is just going to run away with this. And it's going to be as boring of a Final Four as the tournament has been.
You were just hyping up the Final Four and how excited we should be in the beginning of the episode, and this is how you end it.
Well, because it's going to be high-level basketball. But
just not close.
They're so good. They are so good. Kaman Maluak might end up being a 10-time NBA All-Star. He's a freak, and we barely even talk about him. Khan and Coop, they're just so good. I'm so impressed with what they've done. I do think Houston is the team that will make it close. So I think that's a single-digit game, but I think Duke wins by a couple possessions and then just runs, I'll say, Auburn out in the title game.
I would have, a team who I think could beat Duke on a good night is Texas Tech. Because they slow it up and they have 4 elite shooters when they're healthy. So that's Houston has that kind of, but it's ugly. I was thinking my main bracket. I had the Texas Tech Houston rematch that I've been dying for, just because I wanted to bet Texas Tech against them, but we're not going to get that. Calabrese, what's your prediction?
I'll go Duke wins by 3 in the semis over Houston, and then they just absolutely bomb Florida, beat them by 15 plus in the national title game.
All right, and then to sum up, first game, I'm leaning Auburn. Greg likes Auburn. Calabrese going with Broom under prop. Second game, I think we all think the value's on Houston. Greg is not stepping in front of the train, going with a player prop on Mr. Knipple. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll be back with a national title preview over the weekend. Fingers crossed for some good games. And good luck on all of your wagers. Make sure you check out the Action Network app. Shout out to Underdog. Make sure you check them out. And Edgeboost as well. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Greg and Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer on the back end. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review, really helps us out, especially with a dead period coming up. But before you know it, we'll be doing college football previews, and then college basketball season will be here again. But enjoy the Final Four. We'll see you later. And by the way, we'll have more player prop stuff, and probably Nick or Sean with a live show this weekend. So we'll see you then. Good luck. Cheers.